Hey everybody, this is Sales Chats on Friday, coming to you live. I'm Eric Quanstrom, your host. With me, as always, John Golden, our co-host.
Great to see you all again on this great Friday, and we have a super guest today.
Absolutely, we've got Anthony Iannarino joining us.
Hey gents, how are you?
Good. We're really looking forward to talking to Anthony. Anthony, if you want to just give you a brief background, and then we're going to get straight into it.
I don't think I have a brief background. I just have a long, complicated background. The short version is that if you're here and you follow me, it's probably from thesalesblog.com, where I write every single day. And I'm a coach and a consultant and a speaker and a writer and do a whole bunch of things for companies that care about sales.
Yeah, Anthony was even mentioning us before the call. He was jumping off this call to bang out a few sales meetings right thereafter on Friday.
Yeah, plus we were talking about all the cold calling you've been doing this week. So, in keeping with what we said last week when we introduced Sales Chats, is we're bringing you practitioners, people who are really out there doing this, and Anthony is obviously one of those.
Well, he's a little too humble, though, because he is a renowned B2B sales leader, right? And he's also a sales coach, an international speaker, an author, a sales leader. And his consulting firm, one of the things that I really want to get up front in this call, focuses on helping salespeople and sales organizations not only grow and develop, but reach their full potential. And that's kind of the core idea that we wanted to jump into in today's sales chats, because reaching full potential is something that every salesperson, every sales manager, every sales leader should be striving for. But let's face it, it's hard, right? That's kind of the first kind of big takeaway. Anthony, you've got some ideas in this space. What would you start off when we want to talk about peak performance? Give us some of the ideas of how you start to get there.
I think, that's a broad question, but I think it's a lot about transformation, and it's a lot about figuring out what should our full potential look like, and if we were firing on all cylinders, what would that look like? So with B2B sales organizations, it's what's the prospecting process look like? How do we build the top of the funnel? It's what does the sales process actually look like, and can we reverse engineer that, and can we make it so that it's actionable and the rep knows what outcomes they need to get at every single client interaction, and they can get the commitments that they need. I'm still about closing and commitment gaining at every stage. Even though we might not close like we talk about the old school close, you still have to ask for commitments the whole way through. And then it's about, with B2B organizations, it's about getting the best performance from every player on the team. And that shifts people away from I'm a manager or I'm a sales leader to I'm a coach, and my job is to extract the maximum performance for that individual. And honestly, when you do that, then people follow you because they're growing and they have that great experience and they want to give their best performance.
Yeah, you mentioned old school a moment ago. One of the interesting phenomena that we've seen lately is people love to talk about the death of things. Like the Challenger people talked about the death of solution selling, and the social selling advocates, some of them sort of say the death of everything except social selling. But there are real traditional selling skills that endure for a reason, and they seem to be downplayed. I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
Oh, this is a softball. I mean, you're setting me up, right? Yeah, I love Brett and Matt. I mean, they're friends, and I love the work that CEB does, and there's nothing wrong with Challenger. I like it. I mean, I think it's a very good framework for thinking about latent dissatisfaction. And one of the biggest challenges we have as salespeople today is how do we move people from the status quo and help them understand that they have a compelling reason to transform. They're right, but there's a lot of hyperbole right now. It's the death of relationships. Well, try to sell without relationships and let me know how that works out for you. I know everybody wants to be transactional. We think the computer's supposed to do all the lifting now because we have microchips. But I still want a guy, or I still want a girl. I want the person that knows me, that cares about me, that I trust to help me with my problems. That's not going to change because it's been part of the human condition for at least a couple million years, and those kinds of things don't change very quickly. The death of solution selling. What are we selling then? I mean, we're not selling products, we're not selling services, we're selling some combination that results in a better outcome. It's not dead. And then, of course, we get to my favorite, which I know you're setting me up for, John, the death of cold calling. The only thing that works right now is I have to tweet to you, and then you have to tweet to me, and we have to have a relationship. And I know the big thing is don't try to close, try to connect with people. You need to connect. And that just doesn't work. It's not enough for people. If you look through my Twitter stream, you'll see last week I was tweeting with Jeb Blunt, future guest from Sales Gravy, and I was tweeting him through my sales process, asking him to sign my documents and asking him to give me access to his people, just to make a point. And people started popping on and saying, what the hell are you guys talking about here? And I was just pointing out, you just don't sell over social. It's about brand building. It's about thought leadership. It's about establishing your credibility. You're not asking for commitments. You wouldn't think of doing it. It's the wrong channel for that. So it just doesn't work. It's not dead. Cold calling still works. All the things that used to work still work. We might have some more tools in our toolkit, but fundamentally, selling hasn't changed so much that all the things that used to work don't work anymore.
Well, you touched on a really interesting piece here that I think is really inherent, well, obviously inherent to every salesperson out there, and that is really developing expertise in their field of purview. And so, since we've got you on as our expert today, one of the things that I think would be really actionable is talking about at least one, perhaps not obvious, way that you've positioned yourself as a sales expert that people then could extrapolate from and make use of for themselves.
I think probably the biggest and probably least paid attention to, if you're a salesperson, is you really have to study your customer's business. I know it's important, and I know what happens because I speak at a lot of sales summits, and people walk in, and I'm sales content, and then everybody after me is product dump. I mean, so it's let us tell you about features, let us tell you about benefits, let us arm you. But that's not really where the action is. The action's on the other side. So if you want to be somebody who can create value, the action is study your customer's business. And I talked to a young sales rep today, and I said, listen, get an education, and you don't have to get the education on your own. Go to your customers, your prospects, and say, hey, listen, I don't understand how you view this part of your business. Can you teach me how to understand how you think about this problem? They would love to guide you through that process. They will tell you everything they know, and you'll get such a deep education. And you go from one customer and say, educate me. Give me your view of how this works. Give me your view of where value is here. Give me your view about what people in my role should be doing for you. You do that 4 or 5 times, you're going to have a legal pad. I mean, you're going to have a legal pad full of ideas that came out of that conversation that are totally actionable. Later on down the road, when people say, hey, I'm looking at this problem, what do you think? You've got this perceptual lens that all your customers have shaped for you, and people go, that cat's got some ideas. He's smart. He's got what I would call chops. He's learned some things. He can tell me what trade-offs to make. Learn. Go out and educate yourself on how your customers view their challenges and what they think the right answers will look like. And we talked about Challenger, which is a great model, but we're challenging them to think about their business different. Let me challenge you to think about their business too. They have lots of ideas that are valuable if you'll pay attention and ask them to teach you. We're teaching, but we're also learning.
Yeah, why is that often such a difficult concept or an overlooked concept about people actually going and talking to their customers and learning from them? Because I often have people say, yeah, I understand buyer behavior is changing, but how do I figure it out? And I always go, just go talk to your customers, ask them how their buying process may have changed or may be evolving over time. But why is that such an overlooked concept?
Because this is the iPhone 6 Plus, and the only reason I don't have the iPhone 7 Plus is because they haven't made it yet. And as soon as they make it, I'll buy it. And it's because when you have a good product, you expect the product to do all the work for you. And when you have a great service or a great solution, it's easier to say, as soon as they see these things, they're going to recognize the value in it. And I have a client I've done a lot of work with. He may be watching this, but he talks all the time, why change, why now, why us? We don't have the why change answered yet. And the customer has to answer the why change. What's compelling enough for them? But we think as soon as they see this, they're going to be totally compelled. And if you're lucky enough to be Tim Cook or Apple, you've got that story. But for most of us that sell boring commodity type things or things that are mature, it's harder to do that. But we expect the product to do the work or the service to do the work, so we don't have to. But the better work is to go and learn. Go and learn, and they will help you figure out how to help them.
Well, I think one of the other challenges there, too, is not only do we expect the product or the service to do the work, oftentimes we expect another department to do the work, right? Where, oh, that's marketing's job to figure out the persona of who I should be selling into. And and what their psychographic profile is. And I think what I'm hearing coming from you is, each salesperson that really wants to grow in their profession has to understand the people that they're selling into, their jobs at a fundamental level, so that each conversation, each of the small conversations, can turn into a value-oriented conversation, right? I've heard you speak on that before many times.
Absolutely, it's about the value that you bring. And when has a customer ever said, "Hey, Eric, I really need you to send somebody out from marketing because I have a problem out here"?
Our marketing is that good, but
this is marketing's responsibility, though. Their job is to create some sort of an awareness and sort of help us with the toolkit to start getting mind share. Over this shoulder, I've got Andy Grove's book, Only the Paranoid Survive. And his view was salespeople are out there getting the real feedback from customers. That was his Trojan horse. The rep is in there learning everything and then coming back and telling us what we need to do to change. But I would say the point of contact for any business and the customer is the salesperson. And they determine the value that your organization creates by what experience they deliver. So I've written this a half a dozen times on the blog. Every sales call needs to have a value prop. What are they getting out of it? And you say, well, I'm going to walk them through the features and benefits. That's a lousy value prop for the customer. The customer wants to learn. They want to understand what their choices are. They want to start looking at trade-offs. They want a value-based conversation from somebody who can look at their business through their lens and say, what do you see about our business that we might be able to do better at?
So can I bring you back to the earlier topic of cold calling, and you said you're doing cold calling this week. Why is it, again, cold calling, if you mention that, you normally get a pretty visceral reaction from most people, or you'll get people who'll come up with 10,000 reasons why cold calling won't work or why they should be doing something else. But talk to me about...
Well, and it's been done badly.
Yes,
sure. In the hands of the poor salesperson who doesn't call plan, who doesn't research, who doesn't put in the time to make a good cold call. I mean, we've all gotten those, right? Where you feel like a number. This person isn't dialed into you or your business. Frankly, on the buy side, oftentimes it's like, do you even know what company I work for? Right? Like, we've all had those situations.
They haven't been trained. They haven't been given any kind of a planned dialogue on how the conversation's supposed to go, or how they might create value in that call. So I'll tell you what, there's so much pressure on this right now, particularly because social selling's so big, and for some reason, the social selling mafia, that's what I'll call that small group who believes nothing else works except for social selling. It's like a mafia. Like, if you say anything, we'll send a guy to see you to get you to stop talking. Cold calling works exceptionally well. It works far better than social selling. There's no doubt about it. Cold calling is way more effective. It's faster. It generates more appointments still faster than anything else. And I'm not saying you shouldn't use it. I'm a huge proponent. You should have every tool available to you in the toolbox. You should do all of them constantly. But the fact of the matter is, the feeling from the social selling group that I see, that I look at, believes that social selling only has value if cold calling doesn't work. And it's a great pitch, because if I'm a rep and I'm being told cold calling doesn't work, I don't have to pick up the phone. I don't have to do something that makes me uncomfortable. I don't have to interrupt anybody, and that the world's really changed and nobody wants that anymore, then I'm free not to do that anymore. But when did anybody want to cold call? When were people sitting around going, man, I hope a rep calls me today because I can't wait to have somebody on the other end call me and interrupt my day? Nobody's ever wanted to receive a cold call. But the fact of the matter is, it's still the most effective way. And social selling, it still has value. I mean, for me particularly, LinkedIn, I think, is the best place for reps to spend time over there. But the time that they spend there is the same way we used to spend time going through business journals and looking for events and things that would create value so we could have valuable conversations when we made that call. I mean, and that's really, the action is still there. The reason it's being so pushed on right now, and so many people want to shut down the concept of cold calling altogether, is because it makes it easier to sell social selling. I mean, that's the truth of the matter.
So what would you say is another skill that's really kind of been overlooked right now that people should really take another look at or focus in on?
Asking for referrals. That's the second one. The people who don't like to make people uncomfortable asking people for an appointment over the phone also don't like to ask for referrals. They don't see the value in it, and they don't feel good enough about themselves to say, hey, John, if we do really good work for you on this project and it's exactly what you want, at the end of that, I'm going to come to you and ask you if there's anybody else you think I could create value for in the same way. Would you be able to do that if we can make this a success? I mean, and they're uncomfortable saying something like that, and I said it in the softest language I could think of to say it in right now. But referrals are the best source of leads for you, and even asking something to say, John, when we're done, I know you know Eric, I've been trying to reach him. Is there any way I could ask you to just call him for me and ask him to take my call and let him know, just vouch for me that it is going to be worth his time? You can do these things because we're human beings, and when we create value for people, people want to help you. When they have that relationship, they want to find somebody else to say, I got a guy. My guy Eric will help you. You just need to chat with him. He's going to get it taken care of.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you bring that up, too, because I think that what you've touched on without even saying it is the power of intention, right? Stephen Covey once said, begin with the end in mind. And what I'm hearing, especially when you talk about, like, the purpose of a cold call is actually to bring value to somebody, and the purpose of asking for a referral at the beginning basically assumes that, if I can meet these criteria for you, right, if I can provide value is the words you use, then all of a sudden I will be able to control this situation further on down the line and create a referral for myself, right? But that takes organization, discipline, and planning.
It is about intentions, and I would open a sales call that way too. I would say, listen, John, Eric, I appreciate your time. What I'm hoping we can do today is I'd like to do this deep dive diagnosis that we talked about on the phone so I can really understand how to bring value to you. And when we're done, I'm going to ask you for a chance to meet with your team so that I can understand their needs and so they don't feel like they're being left out of this process, and we can get consensus around that. Does that agenda work, or is there anything you want to add to it before we get started? I'm going to tell you what I want to ask you for at the end of it, because I want you to know where we're driving to together. And it's interesting. I shared this on the blog last week. I found it amazingly valuable to just share the process with the customer and just say, look, this is what our process looks like. This is the map that we typically go down. What are you thinking about this? And they get hooked on the map. I mean, they look at it and go, we've never seen that before. So at this step, what would make sense for us is to do this. You go, okay, we could do that. And then we're collaborating, which is what I think customers really want. I don't know that they want to be, I do know we have to challenge them to think about their business different. I don't disagree with developing latent dissatisfaction, but I think a lot of it, they want somebody to collaborate with. How do I do that in my company? How do I get that done here? Because it's hard to make change. It's hard to make change in any company.
Well, it's just interesting what you just said, because in many ways you are dynamically organizing your own sales process for the future, right? Every time you talk, you walk through it with the customer and say, this is how we're going to do it, and even this is the process by which we're going to get to the solution. You're in essence tweaking your sales process with the customer helping you from a buying process point of view, which is a really great collaboration.
Absolutely.
I don't think many of them have a buying process. I mean, if they do, it's typically like RFP, formal purchasing process. But I don't think most buyers, I think they have a psychological process that they go through, which is, I'm unhappy, I need to do something, here's my choices, I'm concerned about this. I think they go through that part of it. But I don't think they really know, how do I go from the status quo to better? And I think showing them a roadmap of how you get to better is a very, very powerful and underused tool that we have in our toolkit.
Yeah. Well, and it does take a bit of organization and discipline to get to that place, doesn't it?
Always.
Yeah. And you see, going back to the thing about referrals, what I've found in the past is not only do a lot of salespeople not do the ask for the referral piece early in the process like you do, some of them are even resistant once they've got the customer to actually go and ask a referral at that stage, because they don't want to disturb anything or introduce any extra variables into the account. And I mean, that for me is always a little mind-blowing.
The tiptoeing.
Yeah, the tiptoeing around when you have a customer and if you've created value, but yet you're still tiptoeing around them.
It's all fear. All of this stuff, I mean, generally, I keep speaking about this. There's just two emotions primarily that human beings have. It's love and fear. And we're driven by those things, but we're mostly driven by fear. And fear has been a powerful, powerful tool for us to survive for 3.5 million years when we were being chased by things that were going to kill us. But now the greater risk that we have, what we should be really afraid of, is not asking for the things we need. We're afraid of asking for that appointment because we think we're going to damage the relationship. we're afraid of asking, the question that I said, John and Eric, when we're done here, I'd like to ask to meet with your team because I don't want them to feel left out. I don't want them to later on resist the change effort that we're making here because they weren't part of it. The fear is that later on it comes unhinged because I didn't ask you for what I need. The fear prevents us from asking for that referral when that person wants to give us the referral. So our fear of damaging the relationship when actually asking for the referral can strengthen the relationship, and it can give you a chance to say, you have created value and I would like to do something for you too. But we fear the wrong dangers. The bigger danger we have is not doing the right thing and not asking for what we need because we're afraid we're going to damage a relationship.
So along those lines, let's assume that everyone out there agrees with exactly what you're saying, because I think it's really insightful.
You stop right there. I like that. So far, everyone in the world agrees with me. This is the best day I've ever had.
Well, that's exactly right. But now comes the hard question. So for those that do agree with that sentiment, but aren't practicing exactly what you're preaching right now, how do they get started?
Yeah.
How do they develop those habits?
The first thing is you have to recognize that it's fear that's holding you back, and you have to decide that you're going to do the only thing that makes fear go away is action. You can't think your way through it. You have to actually take action. You have to try it. But before you try it, you can prepare. You can say, what's the language that I want to use to have this conversation that's going to be the right choice for me to say? Because if I say, John, I'm not going to make my quota, my kids are going to starve, I'm really petrified for my future, it'd be really helpful if you could throw a deal my way. That might not be the most effective language you could use. And you're laughing because you've seen reps do it. Yeah, they're so desperate. The language choice matters. And so you hear me say things, because I think a lot about this language and I help people with it. If I can create value for you and that this is everything that we say it is, what I want to do is I want to ask for your permission to come back to you and ask you for a referral of somebody else within your organization. I can do that for somebody else you know. The language matters a lot, and the delivery matters a lot. And here's the thing, as a speaker that I learned. The first time I ever say words, man, I'm all bottled up inside. They're uncomfortable. They don't feel right. And then the second time they feel better. The third time they feel way better. But after you say the words, you start to get comfortable. So rehearse it. If you're with a group of salespeople, say, hey, I want to run some language by you and see what kind of response you get and help each other. Share the language, go back and forth until you find something that sounds like you're going to get a yes. And then go out and try it on. You're going to be uncomfortable at first, but it gets easier with every repetition.
Well, I think you've just hit on another really interesting point as well, and that's the fact about practicing and preparing.
Role play.
Role play. It's a hugely overlooked thing in many sales organizations. People who don't do sales call plans, people who don't role play different scenarios, only have one advance in mind. Don't have backup advances. But just don't practice. And just like anything else, I mean, sales is to some degree it's performance art, right?
Yeah.
And you've got to practice that, and you've got to be comfortable, as you say, using those words and those skills. But you've got to practice, and that comes down then back to sales management, as we mentioned, or you mentioned earlier, about coaching. It comes down to coaching salespeople properly.
It does, and you look at any performance-based group like that. So you look at the United States military, always training. You look at a sports team, always training. I mean, in a football game, there might be 80 plays run. But those plays are run every day leading up to that because there's a lot on the line. And then a sales call costs a couple $1,000s, and we walk in not having thought through what the play is supposed to look like, having not designed the language, having not thought through the outcomes, what's our backup plan if this doesn't work, having not done that. And it's expensive in a bunch of ways. One, not just financially, but time and reputation. So I walk in, and when you walk in as a salesperson, you have a choice. You can either be a value creator or a time waster. And I see, especially still young salespeople, they walk in and they want to connect. Oh, you guys are in California. Tell me about California. Let's talk about the weather's great out in California, isn't it? And they want to get the connection first because they're afraid that without the connection, they're not going to be able to make something happen. When in fact, you're business people. You want to get down to business. We might talk about personal stuff at the end, but you want to see a rep who's got an agenda that's going to drive your business forward, that's thought this through, that has a plan, that they can talk. And you should rehearse, because the more you rehearse, the better success you have, just like any other person that does anything based on performance like that. all of the hard work should be done in rehearsal so that it's easy when you're actually performing. I am a speaker, and one time I spoke, and they didn't have my slide deck. They didn't have the right slide deck. I spoke anyway. I rehearsed the keynote 35 times. I didn't need a slide deck to know where I was in the speech. You should be able to go through your value proposition, your pitch, your questions. All of those should be rehearsed till you're very comfortable in that customer interaction, so you know you're creating value. And then you're going to be viewed that way. It's up to you what you do before a sales call to prepare for that.
Well, and it's up to you too how you allocate your time, right? And so, I think one of the takeaways from this particular call is, fewer unprepared phone calls to get to volume, more prepared, rehearsed, thought through, role played, having an idea of where you want to take things, calls will likely be more effective. You think about conversion rates, right? Like, it stands to reason that the more prepared I am, the better I'm going to do.
Yeah, and also, it goes back to what you were saying about communication. One of the greatest things I can communicate to you is that I have the respect for you to actually prepare for this call. And I want to get straight down to value creation, like you said. I don't want to waste your time talking about the sunshine in California.
Right.
I actually want to get straight down to the business issues that you want to solve. So it really is a choice. Do you want to communicate that I couldn't be bothered preparing, that I've just got a load of kind of stupid small talk, and I don't value your time?
Yeah, I'm winging it.
Yeah,
I do want to talk about the sun in California sometime. I left there in '92. I left sunny Brentwood, and now I live in Columbus, and it's gray. There's clouds. It's not California.
Well, and the other unfortunate outcome of winging it, just to kind of push this subject a little bit further, is one of the things that I've often experienced, especially on the buy side, right? Like, marketing's often on the buy side of many transactions, is the buyer can almost always feel when they're being treated like a number. When your process as a salesperson supersedes my process or my, attempt to get to value or even realize what the value that you're offering is, you know what I'm saying? It's like incongruous.
It's slow is fast and fast is slow. And if I view you as a transaction, I'm going to try to go fast, but I'm slowing down the process because I'm giving off the vibe that I'm self-oriented. You don't know whether you can trust me. You don't know what my true intentions are. But when I go slow, the opportunity goes faster because I've taken the time to make sure that you're where you need to be as you go through your buying cycle, whatever it is. And I don't think you have a real one, but I think as a buyer, you have this dissatisfaction, but you don't know what you need, so you need somebody to help you. And when we take time to make sure we get that right, then you start looking at your options. And when we start to make sure you know what your trade-offs are, you can make a decision faster. So fast is slow and slow is fast. I think the more transactional you treat people today, especially as the decision gets bigger and more complex, the more you slow things down, you bring it to a stop, or you get a stalled deal that ends up in a no decision. I stick with the status quo because I didn't have enough help thinking this through to feel confident making change. And I see pipelines that are littered with companies that aren't real opportunities because there's still no real commitment to change because they're not through why should I change and why should I do it now, and am I really going to be able to pull this off in my organization? And remember, they know their own organization is full of resistance to this change, so they're petrified as buyers, like, what are we doing here? And you need a rep who goes slow enough that it goes fast for both you and the customer.
Yeah.
And there's an interesting point from Barb Giamanco on the Twitter feed here, and that is that salespeople shouldn't always wait around for their organization or their sales manager to train them. They should invest in themselves. I mean, I'm looking at you. Look at all those sales books behind you. So as individual salespeople, you shouldn't wait around for your organization. You should realize that this is a craft, and it's something that you have to work at and you have to build. But invest in yourself today because the payoff's going to be huge.
You can go out to Barb's site. I mean, you can go to Jeb Blunt. You can go to Mike Weinberg. You can go to Mark Hunter. I mean, I can go straight down the list. You can look at Dave Stein, Mike Kunkel. You can go out and follow any of our Twitter feeds. And if you want an education for free in about 15 to 20 minutes of your time every day, I promise you can find the insights that you need. It's 100% your responsibility to become the value creator that your customer needs. There's no companies left anymore that are going to give you the time and the nurturing that an IBM did at one time or a Xerox did. It just doesn't exist anymore. You got to go get chops on your own, and everything you need to do it is so easily available. You've got YouTube. All you have to do is take the time to invest in yourself, and you can improve. There's no question about it.
It's so funny you bring that up because that's exactly why we started this podcast. Like that couldn't have been more crystal on the purpose behind what we're doing right now. And that's kind of, we wanted to end everything with a Sales Chats supercharged tip from our guests about, name one of your daily secrets to getting to that right mindset of success. And I think you just did it, frankly. I think you just said, listen, invest in yourself and spend the time. Final thoughts?
Get up early. Wake up earlier than you wake up. And I can tell you between 5 and 6:15 in the morning, nobody wants my time. Take and get a yellow legal pad and start writing down ideas. Even my dogs don't want my time, and they look at me like, seriously, we're not going out. It's too early. But you have to take the time, get up early and do something. The question about mindset, and of course you guys did prep work, so I got questions and ideas ahead of time. I set the mindset by determining my state for the day. I do mindfulness meditation. I write in a gratitude journal. I got a whole bunch of incantations because I decided to brainwash myself with the healthiest beliefs that I could personally have. You determine what your state is, and there's nothing that's going to have a greater impact on your results than determining what your mental state is going to be going into each day.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
stuff.
fantastic. So not just sales tips, but also personal development. See the value that Sales Chats brings.
Well, this has been a fantastic episode, Anthony, and we really appreciate you coming on and sharing with us. John, once again, thanks.
Yeah, this has been great, and Anthony, good luck with that sales call later.
That's right.
Thank you. I'm ready.
What do you need luck?
Yeah, exactly. well prepared, no luck.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.